Hello everybody. Today I have the pleasure to talk to you about cost recovery in UN organizations. And to explain to you what it is, I'm going to tell you a little story about 195 friends who decided to travel the world and to go on vacation together. And to do that, they decided to put money in a pot. And from that pot, they bought a huge bus. Here it is. That was going to take them all around the world. Now, once they had decided that, one of the friends, well, the Mexican friend, let's say, said, well, as we're going anyway, then I would like to have a car so that I can drive around to see the places better. Well, then the Dutch guy said, well, if we buy a car for my Mexican friend, well, then I would like us to buy a bike for me so that I can travel around by bike because it's my favorite means of transportation. And the other friends started asking extra things as well. Well, on the one hand, it's very nice because extras means more fun. But on the other hand, it also means more costs. And more specifically, there are two types of costs that are generated by this. First of all, there are specific costs. The specific costs are, for example, the car, or the maintenance of the car, or the insurance of the car, or the bike, or the storage of the bike, etc. But there are also costs that are more general by nature. Because if these friends decide to bring all these extra things with them, that means that they have to buy a big trailer to put them on. And that means that this trailer has to be pulled by their bus. And when a bus pulls more weight, it uses more gas. And more gas costs money. And they have to make sure that the bus has an engine that's strong enough to pull the extra weight, because otherwise it will burn and it will overheat. So that's what cost recovery is about. So how to recover these costs? The specific costs are directly billed to the friend who asked for the extra thing. The car is billed to the Mexican friend, the bike is billed to the Dutch friend, and so on. But these general costs related to the trailer, the extra gas and the engine are more difficult to link to each specific object that they decide to bring along. So the friends decided to make their lives easy by asking each friend who had to pay for something extra to pay a little percentage extra to pay for these general costs. That is what cost recovery is about. Now, in the UN, it's exactly the same thing. Let's look at UNESCO, for example. UNESCO is an organization of 195 member states. Their goal is not to go on vacation and to have fun, but it's to promote peace. And they also do that by putting money in a pot. And that pot is used to buy a secretariat. It's a kind of bus, actually, that pulls or implements all UNESCO's activities. After member states had decided to create this secretariat and to pay for it, member states started asking UNESCO to do some extra work because as it existed anyway, well, let's make the most out of it. The US, for example, asks UNESCO to do some extra work in the field of education, some activities related to Holocaust education, for example, or education for girls and women. The Dutch decided to ask UNESCO to do some extra work in the field of freedom of expression. Because you might not know this, but UNESCO helps countries to protect journalists, and that's good for democracy. Other member states also started asking UNESCO to do some extra activities in its field of mandate: education, culture, science, communication, and information. On the one hand, that's nice because extra activities means more impact of UNESCO. But on the other hand, it generates more costs. And it generates two types of extra costs. First of all, some specific costs. The specific costs are related to the specific project. For example, an education project means that you need consultants to do the project. It means that you need extra paper to print the extra brochures. It means that you need extra plane tickets to send the consultants to places in the world to organize workshops, conferences, etc. There are also more general costs that are generated because these extra activities mean more work for the Secretariat. For example, the Human Resources Department will have to hire more consultants. That is more work. The Financial Management Department will have to oversee and to implement more financial transactions. That also means more work that costs more money. The Evaluations Department will have to do more evaluations because they evaluate UNESCO's work. The Legal Advisor will have to draft more legal contracts, etc., etc. Now the question is, how are these extra costs recovered? Because that's what we're talking about. The specific costs are simply billed to each member state who asked for the extra project. So the Holocaust Education Project will be billed to the US government. UNESCO's projects in the field of freedom of expression, or at least some of them, are billed directly to the Dutch government. But what about the general costs? That are generated by the extra people that are needed to do the extra work that has to be done by the Secretariat. It's too difficult to link these extra costs to each specific activity. That would entail too many details, it would entail too many extra work. That is not a good idea to do. So member states decided to make their life easy and simply to ask each member state who asks UNESCO for an extra activity to pay a little percentage on top of their bill to cover these extra costs needed, or these extra payments needed to reinforce the Secretariat, to do the extra work. Now, how are these costs collected? The specific costs are paid by each member state, and the general costs are also paid by each member state, but in the form of a percentage. And this percentage, all these percentages, they flow into one account that is called the FITOCA account. This stands for Funds in Trusts Overhead Costs Account. And this account pays for extra people or extra hands. Here they are. And these extra hands literally are going to help out the Human Resources Department to do the extra work and to hire the extra consultants, for example, or to help out the Financial Department to oversee the extra financial transactions, or to help out the Evaluations Department with extra evaluators to evaluate the extra projects, and so on. That is how cost recovery works in the UN and at UNESCO. This is my little story about cost recovery. Just to wrap it up quickly, cost recovery, what is it? Cost recovery means that you make sure that the UN organization can continue to pool or implement all its extra activities by collecting the extra dollars that are needed to pay for the extra people who are doing the extra work that is needed to implement all these extra activities. So it's to make the circle round so that the organization is sustainable. How is cost recovery done? Well, as I said, the specific costs are billed directly to each member state who asks for a specific project, and the general costs are also billed to the member states, but in the form of a percentage that then flow into one account that pays for the extra people that reinforces the Secretariat. And then lastly, why do we recover all those extra costs? Well, because if we don't, then this bus will eventually have an engine that's no longer going to work because it's not going to have enough gas anymore, or it's even going to burn down. It's going to get overheated. And that would mean that UNESCO would no longer function. And that would mean that all its extra activities would no longer be implemented. And that is not what the international community wants. That is why we cover costs in UN organizations. I hope you like these explanations. And if you want to learn more about international organizations, you can follow me on Twitter via OSTEUNIT. van. I wish you an excellent day.